For 3 years, I believed I was the only thing standing between my parents and homelessness. I denied myself a life to wire them $384,000, convinced that being a dutiful daughter meant paying without complaint. Then I found the receipt that proved their emergency was a lie. They thought they had broken me, but they had just handed me the evidence I needed to destroy them. The silence in my apartment in Lakewood Heights was expensive. It was the kind of silence you paid a premium for. Tucked away on the 14th floor of a building with a doorman who knew your name but never asked how your day was. I sat at my kitchen island, the quartz countertop cool against my forearms, staring at the notification on my phone screen. It was 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. Outside, the Chicago suburbs were settling into a gray, damp twilight, but inside, the air felt thin, pressurized. The notification was from my banking app. It was a transfer confirmation. $6,500 sent successfully. I closed my eyes and exhaled, waiting for the familiar knot in my stomach to loosen. It did not. I was 33 years old, a senior corporate analyst for a logistics firm, and by all metrics, I was successful. I had a 401k. I had a capsule wardrobe of neutral blazers. I had a car I barely drove because parking was too expensive. But looking at that screen, I felt like a child who had just handed over her lunch money to avoid a beating behind the bleachers. This was the Ross Family Support Fund. That was the official name on the account. Typed out in clean, sans serif font on the bank statements, it sounded official. It sounded like a charity. And in a way, I suppose it was. I was the donor, and my parents, Gwen and Martin Ross, were the sole beneficiaries. I placed the phone face down. The vibration against the quartz sounded like an angry insect. It had not always been like this. Or maybe it had, and I just had not noticed the invoice attached to their affection until I was old enough to pay it. 3 years ago. I had been reeling from a breakup that left me feeling hollowed out and raw. I had moved to Lakewood Heights to escape the memories of a shared life in the city. Seeking stability, I wanted boring. I wanted safe. That was when the calls started changing. My parents had always been dramatic with money. They viewed finances not as a math problem but as a mood ring. If they felt good, they spent. If they felt bad, they panicked. But 3 years ago, the panic shifted into something more structural. I remembered the first call vividly. It was a Sunday. My father, Martin, spoke with a heaviness that terrified me. He told me they were going to lose the house in Briar Glen. He said the market had shifted, that his consultancy work had dried up, that they were drowning. He did not ask for money directly. He just laid out the tragedy and waited. I was the fixer. I had always been the fixer. Since I was 12 years old, mediating their arguments in the back seat of our station wagon. I had learned that peace was something you had to purchase with effort. So, I offered. I told them I could help with the mortgage for a few months until things stabilized. They cried. They actually wept on the phone. My mother called me her angel. She said I was the only one who understood the weight they carried. But the temporary help morphed. It evolved. 2 months turned into 6. The mortgage help turned into help with medical deductibles for a surgery my mother alluded to but never fully explained. Then it was legal fees for a dispute with a contractor that my father insisted was a matter of principle. The chaos became a monthly subscription service. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the sprawling grid of the suburbs. I had always been proud of my ability to organize chaos. At work, I took messy, inefficient supply chains and straightened them out. I made things flow. I made things logical. My parents had weaponized that trait against me. They had presented the solution about 6 months into the arrangement. We were sitting in their living room in Briar Glen, surrounded by the furniture I had grown up with. My father had placed a single sheet of paper on the coffee table. It was titled, Family Preservation Agreement. I remember staring at it, confused. It looked like a contract. It had clauses. It had dates. It outlined a structured monthly contribution from me to a newly created joint account, the Ross Family Support Fund, to ensure the maintenance of the family estate and essential living standards. This is for you, Bella, my father had said. clicking a pen and setting it down next to the paper. We do not want you to feel like we are just asking randomly. This makes it clean. This makes it professional. It is temporary family support, just until we get back on our feet. It felt insane to sign a contract with my parents, but it also felt comforting. A contract meant rules. A contract meant there was an end date, even if the termination clause was vague. A contract meant I was an adult partner, not just a daughter being milked for cash. I signed it. I looked back at my phone. That signature had cost me more than just money. It had cost me my autonomy. I walked back to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I did not drink wine anymore on weeknights. Wine cost money, and I needed every spare dollar. The transfer I had just sent, $6,500, was higher than usual. My mother had called yesterday, her voice tight and breathless. She claimed the property taxes had spiked unexpectedly and they were at risk of a lien. I had asked to see the tax bill. I just need to see the paperwork. Mom, I had said, trying to keep my voice neutral. There was a long silence on the other end. Then came the sigh. It was a specific kind of sigh, a sharp intake of breath that signaled I had wounded her deeply. "You do not trust us," she had said. Her voice was quiet, trembling. "After everything we have done, after we raised you, after we paid for your piano lessons and your braces, now you want to audit us." I did not want to audit them. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe that the people who raised me were not lying to me, so I apologized. I told her I was just stressed from work. I transferred the money. It was a cycle of abuse, sanitized by wire transfers. My phone buzzed again. It was a text message from Sabrina. "Are you still coming tonight? I have a table." Sabrina Cole was the only person in my life who knew the rough outline of the situation. Though I softened the edges when I told her, she was a lawyer, sharp and cynical, and she had zero tolerance for emotional blackmail. I typed back, "On my way." I needed to get out of the apartment. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. We met at a small bistro downtown, the kind of place with dim lighting and overpriced appetizers. Sabrina was already there, nursing a martini. She looked up as I approached, her eyes scanning my face. "You look tired," she said, not as a criticism, but as a fact. "Long week," I said. Sliding into the booth, she pushed a menu toward me, or a long phone call. I flinched. She knew. They needed help with taxes. I said, keeping my voice low, "It is a one-time thing." Sabrina raised an eyebrow. "Bella, last month it was the water heater. The month before that, it was Martin's car transmission. This house of theirs seems to be made entirely of emergencies. It is complicated," I said, picking up the menu to avoid her gaze. "They are struggling. The economy is tough for people their age. They are in their 50s. "Bella," Sabrina said, "they are not 80. They are capable of working." "Martin is consulting." I lied. I knew he was not. I knew he spent his days golfing or networking, waiting for the big break that never came because he felt he was too good for regular employment. Sabrina sighed and leaned back. "Look, I am not trying to be a jerk, but I worry about you. You are driving a 6-year-old sedan and living in a studio apartment, basically, while you subsidize their life in a 4-bedroom house. You are like an ATM with feelings." The phrase stung because it was true. An ATM with feelings. I laughed, but it was a dry, brittle sound. "It is almost over." I said, "I have a plan. I am going to talk to them about scaling back next month." Sabrina looked at me, her expression softening into pity. "Just be careful, Bella. Family is family, but math is math. Make sure the math works for you." I ordered a salad and water. I did not order a drink. $6,500 was gone from my account, and I could not justify a $14 cocktail. Later that night, back in the silence of my apartment, I could not sleep. Sabrina's voice echoed in my head. Math is math. I sat up in bed and opened my laptop. The blue light washed over my duvet. I opened a spreadsheet I had created 3 years ago, the one titled simply Expenses. I had never totaled it. I had tracked it, row by row, date by date, but I had never used the sum formula. I was afraid of what it would show. I preferred the ignorance of the monthly struggle to the horror of the cumulative total. But tonight, the shame of the $14 cocktail I didn't order was gnawing at me. I scrolled down. The rows went on and on. January 12th, mortgage support, $420. February 15th, medical copay, $1,800. March 1st, family fund contribution, $3,500. April 10th, legal retainer help, $5,000. It was a waterfall of numbers. I highlighted the column. I moved my cursor to the bottom right corner of the screen where the software automatically calculated the sum. My breath hitched. $384,150. I stared at the number. It did not look real. It looked like a phone number. It looked like the price of a house. $384,000. I felt a wave of nausea roll through me, hot and acidic. I stood up and walked to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. That money was my life. That was the down payment on the house I'd been dreaming of but kept delaying. That was the master's degree I wanted to pursue. That was a trip to Europe I had canceled 3 times. And what did I have to show for it? Nothing. My parents were still in debt. They were still panicking every month. They were still calling me with that specific tone of desperate entitlement. If I had taken that money and burned it in a bonfire, at least I would have had the warmth. I went back to the laptop. I needed to understand. I needed to see where it had gone. I logged into my email. I had a folder labeled Family, where I kept the few confirmations they sent me. Usually, they were just text saying received, or thanks, sweetie. But as I scrolled through the inbox, searching for a specific date from last month, my eye caught something in the spam folder. It was a subject line, "Thank you for your generosity. Harbor Light Outreach." I frowned. I did not donate to charities. I could not afford to. I clicked on it. The email was formatted professionally, with a blue logo featuring a stylized lighthouse. Dear Bella Ross, thank you for your contribution of $3,200 on November 14th. Your support helps us illuminate the path for those in need. I froze. November 14th. I quickly switched tabs to my bank statement. I scrolled to November 14th. There was a transfer on that date, $3,200, but the recipient listed on my bank statement was Ross Family Support Fund. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. Why would a charity be thanking me for a transfer I made to my parents? I read the email again. It looked generic. It was a receipt for tax purposes. Maybe my parents had donated the money in my name, no. That made no sense. They were begging me for money to pay bills. They would not turn around and donate it to charity. Unless the Ross Family Support Fund was not just a bank account. I opened a new tab and searched for Harbor Light Outreach. A website popped up. It was full of stock photos of happy families and vague mission statements about empowering communities and strategic family intervention. It looked real, but also thin. There were no names of board members, no specific addresses, just a P.O. box in a town called Fairmont Ridge. I felt a cold prickle of suspicion on the back of my neck. I picked up my phone. It was almost midnight, but I didn't care. I needed to know. I texted my mother. Mom, did you donate to a charity called Harbor Light Outreach in my name? I just got a receipt. I watched the screen. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then they disappeared. Then appeared again. The response came 2 minutes later. What? No. I have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe it is spam. You know how the internet is. It was dismissive. Too dismissive. I typed back. The amount matches the transfer I sent you on the 14th. Exactly. This time. The silence stretched for 10 minutes. Finally, my phone rang. It was my father. I answered. Hello, Bella. He said. His voice was low. Disappointed. Mom is crying. I gripped the phone tighter. Why is she crying? I just asked a question. You are accusing us of something, he said. We can hear it in your texts. You are tracking us. You are watching us like we are criminals. I am not, I said, my voice shaking. I just got a receipt for $3,000 from a charity I have never heard of. Matching the money I sent you for the car repairs. I just want to know why. My father sighed. That heavy, tragic sigh. Bella. We use a service to help manage the family accounts now, to keep things organized, like you wanted. Harbor Light helps with financial restructuring. It is a processing thing. Why do you have to make everything so ugly? Financial restructuring, I asked. Since when? You never told me that. We did not think we had to run every administrative detail by you, he snapped. We are your parents, not your employees. God. Bella. Family keeps score now. Is that who you have become? You count every penny and hold it over our heads. The guilt washed over me. Thick and suffocating. He twisted it so fast. Suddenly, I was the one being petty. I was the one being ungrateful. I am not keeping score. I whispered, It feels like you are. He said, Look, we are tired. We are doing the best we can to keep this family afloat. If you want to stop helping, just say it. Just tell us you don't care what happens to us. But don't interrogate us over paperwork. I bit my lip hard enough to taste copper. I was terrified. I was terrified that if I pushed, they would cut me off. They would label me the selfish daughter, the cold one, the one who let them fail. I am sorry. I said, I was just confused. Fine, he said. Go to sleep. Bella. We will talk when you are calmer. The line went dead. I sat there in the dark, the phone warm in my hand. I had apologized. Again. But something had shifted. The nausea was still there, but it was joined by something else. A cold, hard clarity. Financial restructuring. A processing thing. It didn't make sense. You don't route personal bank transfers through a charity for car repairs. I looked at the number on the spreadsheet again. $384,150. I thought about the family agreement I had signed. I thought about the Ross Family Support Fund. I opened a new folder on my laptop desktop. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the trackpad. Naming it felt like a betrayal. It felt like I was declaring war on my own blood. But then I remembered the silence on the other end of the line before my father spoke. The strategic pause. I named the folder Evidence. I did not know what I was looking for yet, but for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't just going to pay the bill, I was going to read the fine print. The next morning, the sun came up over Lakewood Heights, bleak and gray. I went to work. I sat in meetings about supply chain optimization. I drank the terrible office coffee. But every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Around noon. I saw a notification from Facebook. My mother had tagged me in a post. I opened the app. It was a photo of me from high school, smiling, looking young and unburdened. The caption read, So incredibly blessed to have a daughter who steps up when times are tough. Family is everything. Thank you, Bella, for your heart of gold. We love you so much. It had 42 likes. Comments were pouring in. You raised a good one. Gwen. Such a sweet girl. Family first. I stared at the screen. It was a performance. It was a receipt for the public. Proof that they were good parents and I was a good daughter. But I knew the truth now, or at least, I suspected it. The heart of gold they praised was just a line of credit they were maxing out. I liked the post. I had to. It was part of the script. But then I switched back to my banking app. I clicked on the transaction history. I found the export button. Download CSV. I saved the file to my desktop, dragged it into the evidence folder, and closed the laptop. My chest felt tight, a mix of panic and resolve. I did not want to be right. I desperately, aching, wanted to be wrong. I wanted my father to be telling the truth about financial restructuring. I wanted my mother to be crying because she was hurt, not because she was caught. But $384,000 was a lot of money to be wrong about. I picked up my phone and texted Sabrina. You were right. The math doesn't add up. I didn't wait for her reply. I went back to work, my face calm, my blazer buttoned, while inside, the dutiful daughter was beginning to die. And something else was starting to wake up. The week dragged on. My parents didn't call for 3 days, the punishment silence. They were waiting for me to break, to call them and apologize again, to offer more money as a peace offering. That was the pattern. I would feel the void of their approval and rush to fill it with cash. This time, I didn't call. Instead, I went through the last year of bank statements. I started looking for the patterns Sabrina had warned me about. I noticed that the requests for urgent medical bills always came on the third Thursday of the month. I noticed that the legal fees were always round numbers: $2,000, $5,000, never $2,142.50. Lawyers billed in increments, yes, but total bills were rarely that clean. And then I saw the account names. Most transfers went to Ross Family Support Fund, but 3 times in the last year. The recipient name had been slightly different: RFS Fund Management, Ross Support Trust, HLO Services, HLO, Harbor Light Outreach. I felt a chill. They were sloppy, or maybe they just thought I was stupid. They thought I was so desperate to be loved that I wouldn't read the payee line. And they had been right. For 3 years. They had been right. I printed the statements. I took a red pen and circled the HLO transactions. I was sitting on my living room floor, surrounded by paper, when my phone rang on Friday night. It was Gwen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. I cleared my throat, forcing my voice to sound normal. "Hey, Mom, Bella," she said. Her voice was bright, too bright, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't accused me of betrayal 3 days ago. "Hi," I said. "Listen, honey, Martin and I were talking. We found a way to lower the monthly support." I blinked. "Really? Yes. We are cutting back on some things. We can drop it down to $4,000 next month." 4,000? That was still more than my rent, but it was a concession. It was a crumb. That is good news. "Mom," I said, carefully, "we knew you would be relieved." She said, "We hate asking you for help. You know that. We just want to make sure everything is secure for the future, for the legacy." The legacy. The word tasted like ash. What legacy? The debt. The lies. "Oh, and Bella," she added, her voice dropping to a casual, by the way tone. "Yeah, Martin needs you to sign an addendum to the agreement. Just a small update. Since the amount is changing, we need to document it. For the bank? For the bank?" My stomach turned. There was no bank requirement for me to give my parents money. This was about control. They wanted me to sign something new. They wanted to lock me in again. "Send it over." I said, "I will look at it." "Great," she said. "You are the best. Bella. Seriously, we would be lost without you." I hung up. I looked at the papers scattered on the floor. The circled transactions. $384,150. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. I was done being the best. I was done being the angel. I didn't know how I was going to stop them yet. I didn't know the extent of what they were doing, but I knew one thing: I was not signing that addendum. I went back to my laptop and opened the evidence folder. I created a new document. Title: Questions for Dad. I typed one. Who is the registered agent for Harbor Light Outreach 2? Why do the transfer names change 3? Where are the invoices for the legal fees? I stared at the questions. I wasn't ready to ask them yet, not until I had the answers myself. I closed the laptop. The silence in the apartment was still expensive, but for the first time, it didn't feel empty. It felt like the calm before a storm. I was not just a daughter anymore. I was an analyst, and I was about to analyze my own family out of business. The phone buzzed one last time. A text from Martin. Sent the document. Please sign and return by Monday. Love you. I looked at the words, love you. I put the phone down and did not reply. $384,000. I would get every cent back, or I would burn the legacy to the ground. I didn't know which one yet, but the payment period was officially over. The email sat in my drafts folder for 2 days before I finally pressed send. I had written it, rewritten it, and softened the language until it felt less like a boundary and more like a polite suggestion. I was proposing a temporary reduction in my monthly contributions, dropping the amount from $4,000 to $1,500 for a period of 6 months. My reasoning was simple. I had found a townhouse in Lakewood Heights that was perfect. It was small. It needed work, but it was real estate. It was equity. For 3 years. I had been paying rent I could barely afford because my savings were being funneled into the black hole of my parents' finances. I needed this. I needed to feel like I was building something for myself, not just maintaining the crumbling facade of their lifestyle. I pressed send at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, hoping the professional timing would signal that this was a rational, financial decision. The reaction was immediate and nuclear. My mother did not email back. She called me 7 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail, my heart hammering against my ribs in the middle of the open-plan office. I listened to the message in a bathroom stall. Bella. Her voice cracked, thick with tears. I do not understand. Are you punishing us? Martin is beside himself. We rely on that money for the essentials. If you cut us off now, we lose the health insurance. We lose the car insurance. Do you want us driving around unprotected? I thought we were a team. I leaned my forehead against the cool metal of the stall door. It was always the same tactic: escalation, catastrophe. If I held back $1, they claimed I was inviting disaster. I called her back that evening. I tried to be firm. Mom, I said, keeping my voice steady, I'm not cutting you off. I am just reducing the amount for 6 months so I can make a down payment. I have been renting for years. I need to buy a home. A home, she asked. The word sharp. You have a home, Bella. Briar Glen is your home. You are going to jeopardize our security so you can buy some condo you do not even need. You are single. Why do you need a house? The implication hung in the air. You do not have a real life. So why do you need real money? I am 33, Mom. I said, I want to invest. Martin took the phone then. His voice was different. It was calm, low, and terrifyingly reasonable. Bella, listen to me. We are happy for you. Of course we are. But timing is everything. Right now, the market is volatile. We are in a delicate position with the restructuring. If you pull back the funding now, the whole house of cards falls. Is that what you want? To see us fail over a down payment? He made me feel like a child asking for a toy while the house was burning down. I did not buy the townhouse. I did not reduce the payments. I stayed at $4,000, hating myself with every transfer. But something had fractured. The blind trust was gone. In the weeks that followed, the dynamic shifted. My parents sensed my hesitation, and they responded with a barrage of proof. My phone became a gallery of panic. Gwen started sending me screenshots of bills almost daily. They were always cropped. A photo of a utility bill, zoomed in on the past due line in red ink, but cutting off the usage dates and the account number. A screenshot of a medical invoice showing a balance of $600, but the top half where the patient name and service description should be was missing. See, she would text, we are drowning here. Bella. I sat on my couch one night, zooming in on a screenshot of a credit card statement she had sent. It showed a minimum payment due of $400, but just at the edge of the crop, I could see the merchant name for the last transaction. Nordstrom. I texted her, Mom, what is that charge at the bottom? Is that Nordstrom? She replied instantly. Old charge. From before the crisis. Interest is killing us. Please just send the help. I felt a prickle of heat on my neck. Interest on a Nordstrom charge from 3 years ago. It didn't make sense. Then came the medical crisis. It was a Tuesday night. Martin called, his voice tight. It is your mother, he said. She is in the hospital. Chest pains. We are at St. Jude's. My stomach dropped. For all my suspicion, the fear was hardwired. Is she okay? Stress. Bella, he said, letting the word land like a stone. The doctors say it is acute stress. Her blood pressure is through the roof. They want to keep her for observation. Run some cardiac tests. I am coming, I said, reaching for my keys. No, he said quickly. No, do not come. It is late. You have work. She is sedated now anyway. We have to pay the deductible up front for the imaging. It is $2,500. They will not proceed without it. I paused. I knew how hospitals worked. They billed you. They did not demand $2,500 in cash before running a test on a woman with chest pains. Dad, That does not sound right. I said, "Let me call the billing department. I will pay them directly over the phone." There was a silence, a long, heavy silence. "Bella, do not do that," he said. His voice had lost the panic and gone cold. "Why not?" I asked. "It is faster. Give me the account number." "You are going to embarrass us," he said. "You are going to call up the hospital and act like we are children who cannot handle our own affairs, like we are charity cases. I am paying the bill either way." "Dad, why does it matter if I pay them or you?" "Because it is about dignity," he shouted. The sudden volume made me jump. "It is about respect. We are the parents. You are the daughter. You send the money to the family fund, and we handle the doctors. That is how this works. If you do not trust us, then fine. Let your mother sit here in pain." I stood in my kitchen, my hand shaking. He was leveraging her health against my compliance. I transferred the money, $2,500. But the next morning, I did not just go to work. I called St. Jude's Hospital. I asked for the billing department. I gave them my mother's name and date of birth. I told them I wanted to check on the status of a deductible payment. The woman on the line typed for a moment. "I am sorry, ma'am," she said. "We have no record of a Gwen Ross being admitted yesterday, or this week." "Are you sure?" I asked, gripping the phone. "Maybe the emergency room. I am checking the entire system." She said, "The last record we have for Gwen Ross is a routine dermatology appointment 8 months ago." I ended the call. There was no heart attack. There was no chest pain. There was just a lie worth $2,500. I did not confront them. Confrontation required energy I did not have. Instead, I opened my laptop. I created a new tab in my spreadsheet. I labeled it "The Pattern." I started logging everything, not just the money, but the context. Column A, date. Column B, amount requested. Column C, the excuse. Column D, the emotional lever. I went back through 3 years of texts and emails. I spent my weekends analyzing the data like it was a forensic audit of a failing company, and the patterns emerged, stark and undeniable. Requests spiked exactly 4 days before every major holiday weekend. Before Memorial Day, the boiler broke. Before Labor Day, the car needed new tires. Before Thanksgiving, the property tax assessment arrived early. They were funding their holidays. They were using my money to pay for long weekends and road trips, disguising them as household catastrophes. I looked at the amounts. They were always rounded. 1,500, 3,000, 500. Real life was messy. Real bills were $342.87. My parents' emergencies were perfectly calibrated integers. Then I noticed the account names on the bank statements. For the first year, it was consistently Ross Family Support Fund. Then, it shifted to RFS Management. Then, Harbor Light Outreach, the fake charity. Then, Simply Consulting Services. It was as if they were testing labels, seeing which one looked the most legitimate, or perhaps shuffling the money between different shells to hide the trail. I needed an expert. Sabrina listened to me over coffee that Sunday. I showed her the spreadsheet on my tablet. She didn't look surprised. She looked resigned. "You need to talk to Dylan," she said. "Who is Dylan? Dylan Mercer. He is a forensic accountant. We worked together on a divorce case last year. The husband was hiding assets in shell companies. Dylan found every dime. He is intense, but he is good." I met Dylan 2 days later at a quiet bar near the river. He was younger than I expected, maybe my age, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to be reading the fine print on my face. He wore a hoodie under a blazer, looking more like a tech founder than an accountant. He didn't offer sympathy, he offered analysis. He scrolled through my spreadsheet, his finger tapping the screen occasionally. "This is classic," he said. His voice was dry. "The rounding, that is the biggest tell. Fraudsters hate odd numbers. They think round numbers sound more convincing. They are wrong." He pointed to the Harbor Light Outreach entry. "This is the most dangerous part," he said. "If they are creating fake entities to funnel the money, that is not just lying to you, that is wire fraud. That is tax evasion. Depending on how they filed it, they could be in serious trouble." I don't want them in jail. Dylan, I said, I just want to know the truth. The truth is expensive. Bella, he said. He looked at me. Real emergencies do not come with branding. People in crisis do not set up LLCs and create logos for their bank accounts. They scramble. This is a business model. You are not the daughter. You are the angel investor. He handed the tablet back to me. Stop paying, he said. I can't just stop. I said, they are my parents. He shrugged. Then keep paying. But know what you are buying. You are not buying their safety. You are buying their silence. And the price is only going to go up. His words rattled in my head as I drove to Briar Glen the following Saturday. I hadn't told them I was coming. I needed to see the crisis with my own eyes. The drive was 2 hours of flat Indiana cornfields. I turned into their subdivision, a neighborhood of large brick houses built in the 90s. It was a place where people cared deeply about lawn maintenance and appearances. I pulled into the driveway and froze. There was a car parked next to my father's aging sedan. It was an SUV, a pearl-white luxury model with the dealer plates still on the front. It gleamed in the afternoon sun, looking massive and expensive. I got out of my car and walked over to it. I peered through the window. Cream leather seats, a digital dashboard. This was a $70,000 vehicle. My mother opened the front door before I could knock. She was wearing a new cashmere cardigan, her hair freshly colored. Bella, she exclaimed. Her smile tight. We didn't know you were coming, I pointed at the driveway. Whose car is that? She didn't flinch. Oh, that is Martin's friend's car. Jim. You know Jim. He is leasing it and, well, he needed a place to store it for a few weeks while he travels. Martin is just watching it for him. Jim, I asked. The Jim who moved to Florida 5 years ago. He is back for business, she said, waving her hand dismissively. Come in. Come in. Do not stand out here. I walked inside. The house smelled of vanilla and expensive cleaning products. It did not look like a house on the brink of foreclosure. It looked comfortable. It looked prosperous. We sat in the kitchen. My father came in from the backyard, wiping his hands on a towel. He hugged me, but his body was stiff. Surprise visit, he said. Checking up on us, I just wanted to see you. I lied, and I was worried about Mom. The heart scare. He paused, just for a fraction of a second, as if remembering the script. Oh, yes, she is much better. The medication is helping, but we have to be careful. No stress. We sat down for dinner. They had ordered takeout from a high-end Italian place in town. Steaks, pasta, wine. I watched them eat. They looked healthy. They looked relaxed. They did not look like people who had begged their daughter for $2,500 for a medical emergency 10 days ago. During the meal, my father's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and grinned. I have to take this, he said. It is work. He put the phone on the table and tapped the speaker button. Perhaps forgetting I was there, or perhaps just arrogant enough not to care. Hey, Martin, a booming voice said. We are still on for the trip next month. The deposit is due Tuesday. My father's eyes flicked to me, panic flashing for an instant. He reached for the phone, but he was not fast enough. Don't worry about the deposit, Martin said, his voice loud, trying to drown out the other man. I am handling it. Yeah, well, make sure the cash is there. The voice laughed. I know you said the funding is secured, but you know how these things go. She will pay, Martin said. He said it quickly, almost under his breath. But in the quiet kitchen, it sounded like a gunshot. She always pays. He tapped the button to end the call and laughed, a nervous, barking sound. Work banter, he said, looking at me. These guys, always joking about clients paying invoices. It is a tough industry. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. She will pay. She always pays. He wasn't talking about a client. He was talking about me. I stood up. I have a headache. I said, I am going to get some water. I walked into the kitchen, away from the dining room. I needed to breathe. I leaned against the counter, my hands gripping the edge. He had said it with such certainty, such casual, laughing certainty. I was the guarantee. I was the golden goose. My eyes scanned the kitchen counter. Usually, it was cluttered with mail. Today, it was mostly clear, except for a stack of folders near the coffee maker. My parents were still talking in the dining room, their voices low. I stepped closer to the folders. The top one was labeled in my mother's handwriting, Support Fund Statements. I opened it. It wasn't a mess of bills. It was a dossier. There were bank statements. Yes, but they were highlighted. There were notes in the margins in my father's handwriting. November. Ask for $3,000. Taxes. December, push for medical, $2. 5,000 target. January quiet month. Maintenance only. It was a schedule. It was a revenue projection. My hand shook as I turned the page. There was a printout of an email I had sent them a year ago, where I mentioned I might get a bonus at work. Next to the bonus amount, my father had written, capture 40%. Capture. Like I was a hostile market they were trying to corner. They were not just reacting to emergencies, they were planning them. They were forecasting my income and inventing crises to strip mine my accounts. I heard a chair scrape in the dining room. I closed the folder instantly and stepped back. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought they would hear it. My mother walked into the kitchen, carrying dirty plates. "Are you okay?" "Honey," she asked. "You look pale." "I am fine," I said. My voice sounded strange, hollow, just tired. I did not scream. I did not throw the folder at them. I did not flip the table. A coldness settled over me, absolute and terrifying. The part of me that was the daughter, the one who wanted to please, the one who wanted to save them, curled up and died right there on the kitchen tiles. What remained was the analyst, the woman who looked at data and found the rot. "I need to go." I said, "I have an early meeting tomorrow." "But you just got here," Gwen protested. "You haven't even had dessert." "I can't." I said. I grabbed my purse. I walked out the door, past the gleaming white SUV that my money had paid for, past the manicured lawn that my sacrifice had watered. I drove back to Lakewood Heights in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the hum of the tires on the asphalt. I did not cry. I was done crying. Crying was for people who were confused. I wasn't confused anymore. I walked into my apartment and went straight to my desk. I opened the spreadsheet. I created a new tab. Title, The Reckoning. I typed a single sentence at the top, no more money without documentation. I was going to build a case. I was going to collect every receipt, every email, every text message. I was going to let them dig the hole a little deeper, let them get confident, let them think the Bank of Bella was still open for business. And when the moment was right, I was going to close the account. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Martin. "Great seeing you. Sweetie, sorry about the rush. Love you." I looked at the text. "She will pay. She always pays." I typed back. My fingers steady. "Love you too. Dad." I put the phone down. I would pay. All right, but not in cash. I was going to pay them back with the one thing they couldn't spend: the truth. The morning after I returned from Briar Glen, I did not call my parents. I did not text them to say I had arrived home safely. I sat at my desk, staring at the cursor blinking on a blank email draft, and I treated them exactly as I would treat a vendor who had failed a compliance audit. I typed a subject line, "Request for documentation, fiscal year review." I kept the body of the email sterile. I did not ask why they were doing this. I did not mention the folder I had found in their kitchen or the conversation I had overheard about capturing 40% of my bonus. I simply stated that for my own tax purposes and financial planning, I required itemized invoices for all support payments made to the Ross Family Support Fund and any associated entities, specifically Harbor Light Outreach. For the past 12 months, I hit send. The response took 6 hours. When it arrived, it wasn't from my father. It was from an email address I didn't recognize, admin Harbor Light Outreach, org. Attached were 12 PDF files. I opened the first one. It was a statement for January. At first glance, it looked impressive. There was a logo, a blue lighthouse with rays of light cutting through a stylized fog. The header read, "Harbor Light Outreach Illuminating Family Stability." The layout was clean. There were columns for date, description, and amount. January 12th. Housing Stabilization Grant, $4,200. January 15th. Medical Subsidy Allocation, $1,800. It looked like a receipt from a nonprofit. It looked like I was a donor helping a needy family. But then I zoomed in. My job was to look at data until it confessed its secrets. I spent my days analyzing supply chains, looking for inefficiencies, spotting the tiny discrepancies that signaled a shipment was late or a supplier was cutting corners. I knew what professional documents look like. These documents were trying too hard. On the March statement, the font for the dollar amounts was Arial, but the font for the descriptions was Times New Roman. It was a subtle shift, the kind that happens when someone copies and pastes text from two different sources into a template. I opened the July statement. The invoice number was 2024-0089. I opened the August statement. The invoice number was 2024-0089. They had forgotten to update the invoice number. I felt a cold tightness in my chest. This wasn't just a lie. It was a production. Someone had sat at a computer, likely my father, and built these files. He had chosen a logo. He had typed out Housing Stabilization Grant to describe paying his mortgage. He had created a fantasy world where my money wasn't just cash for his lifestyle, but a charitable grant for his existence. I forwarded the emails to Dylan. Look at the metadata. I typed, Dylan called me an hour later. I'm looking at them, he said. His voice was flat, devoid of the surprise I felt. And I asked, and they are clumsy, he said. The author field in the PDF properties isn't Harbor Light admin. It is Martin Ross. He didn't even scrub the file info. I closed my eyes. Hearing it out loud made it worse. But that is not the interesting part, Dylan continued. I ran a check on the entity. Harbor Light Outreach. It exists. It has a website. It has a presence. But it is a shell. Bella. It is real enough to pass a casual glance, but shallow enough to be disposable. What does that mean? It means if you look for their 990 forms, the tax forms nonprofits have to file. They aren't there, because they probably aren't a 501c3, they are masquerading as one. I need to know what they are, I said. Then you need to look at the state business registry. Dylan said, search for the LLC. People like this always register an LLC because it is easy. Go to the Secretary of State's website for Indiana. I hung up and opened the Indiana Business Portal. My fingers felt heavy as I typed Harbor Light. The search results loaded. Harbor Light Community Solutions, LLC. I clicked on the filing history. The formation date stared back at me. October 15th, 2 years ago. I froze. I had been sending them money for 3 years. The LLC was only 2 years old. That meant for the first year, they were just taking the money. But at some point, probably around the time I started asking questions, or maybe when they decided they needed to feel more legitimate, they had incorporated. They had turned their dependency into a limited liability company. I looked at the registered agent's address, 4502 Maple Avenue, Suite 104, Fairmont Ridge, Indiana. Fairmont Ridge was the town next to Briar Glen. It was a strip mall suburb, full of fast food chains and shipping centers. I copied the address into Google Maps. Street view loaded. I zoomed in on 4502 Maple Avenue. It wasn't an office building. It wasn't a community center. It was a pack and ship store, the mailbox hub. Suite 104 wasn't a suite. It was a rental mailbox. I stared at the image of the store. With its faded awning and neon open sign, this was Harbor Light Outreach. This was the headquarters of the organization dedicated to illuminating family stability. A metal box in a shipping store next to a vape shop. I understood the mechanism then. I saw the whole machine. They insisted I transfer money to the Family Support Fund. From there, they moved it to the LLC. Then, the LLC paid them. I went back to the PDFs they had sent me. I looked at the descriptions again. Program reimbursements, consulting fees. They were paying themselves a salary with my money. By funneling it through the LLC, they washed the guilt off. It wasn't their daughter paying their bills anymore. It was income from their organization. I was the client. They were the service providers. And the service they provided was being my parents. It was administrative manipulation. They had built a wall of paperwork to separate themselves from the reality of what they were doing. If I accused them of using me, they could point to the ledger. No, Bella, look, these are legitimate program expenses. They had structured their exploitation of me. I pushed my chair back from the desk and walked into my living room. I sat on the floor, leaning against the sofa. The apartment was dark, save for the glow of the city outside. I expected to feel rage. I expected to want to scream. Instead, I felt a profound, crushing grief. I replayed the last 3 years in my mind. Not the money, but the moments. I remembered the time I skipped my best friend's bachelorette party in Nashville because I had sent $3,000 to cover a legal emergency for my father. I had told my friend I had to work. I lied to protect them. I remembered the Christmas I bought myself a winter coat from a thrift store because I had transferred $5,000 for their heating system repair. My mother had hugged me that Christmas, wearing a new diamond pendant, and told me I looked sensible. I remembered the apologies. God, the apologies. I am sorry I asked questions. Dad, I am sorry I made you feel bad. Mom, I am sorry. I am sorry. I am sorry. I had apologized for being robbed. They had watched me struggle. They had watched me drive a car with a rattling transmission. They had watched me stay in a studio apartment while they leased luxury SUVs and renovated their kitchen. And they hadn't cared. That was the part that broke me. It wasn't the greed. It was the indifference. They saw my pain as a necessary overhead cost for their comfort. I sat there for a long time, letting the realization settle into my bones. It was a heavy, cold weight, but it was solid. It was the truth. And for the first time in 3 years, I was standing on solid ground. I stood up. I walked back to the desk. I wasn't going to ask for a refund. I wasn't going to ask for an explanation. I was going to shut them down. But first, I needed to hear them say it. I needed to give them one last chance to lie to my face, just to be sure. I picked up my phone and dialed the landline in Briar Glen. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. They would be finished with dinner. Martin answered. "Hello, Dad. It is Bella. Bella, we were just talking about you. Did you get the files I did?" I said, "I am looking at them now." Good. Good. See, everything is in order. Very transparent. We want you to feel comfortable." "Dad," I said, keeping my voice incredibly soft, "who runs Harbor Light Outreach?" There was a pause, a beat of silence that lasted 2 seconds too long. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean, who is the director? Who makes the decisions? The invoices come from an admin account, but there are no names." "Bella," he said, his tone shifting into that familiar, disappointed register. "Why does it matter? It is an administrative structure. We work with consultants, people who help us manage the flow." "What consultants?" I asked. "What are their names?" He sighed, a loud performative exhale. "You know, Bella, I worry about you. You worry about me. Yes, I think your job is getting to you. You spend all day looking for problems, for fraud, for bad actors. And now you are bringing that energy home. Your success has made you suspicious of everyone, even your own family. It was such a clean deflection." He took my question and turned it into a diagnosis of my character flaws. "I am not suspicious." "Dad," I said, "I am just reading the documents you sent me. The address for the LLC is a mailbox store in Fairmont Ridge." Silence. Absolute, dead silence. Then, my mother's voice came on the line. She must have been listening on the extension. So she snapped. Her voice wasn't sweet anymore. It was sharp. "Lots of businesses use mailing addresses. Bella, it is for privacy. You are obsessing over details that don't matter because you want to find a reason to stop helping us. If you want to abandon us, just do it, but don't play detective. It is insulting." I listened to her anger. It wasn't the anger of someone who was misunderstood. It was the anger of someone who had been caught and was trying to bully their way out of it. "You are right," I said. What she asked, surprised by my sudden capitulation. "You are right," I repeated. "I am obsessing over details. I should stop." "Exactly," Martin said, his voice smoothing out instantly. "We just want peace, Bella. We just want to be a family." "Me too," I said. "Good night, Dad. Good night, Mom." I disconnected. I didn't argue. I didn't tell them I knew about the invoice numbers or the font shifts. I didn't tell them I knew the consultants were them. I stopped arguing because arguing is what you do when you want to change someone's mind. I didn't want to change their minds. I wanted to cut their supply line. I opened a new tab on my browser. First National Bank. I clicked Open New Account. I spent the next hour setting up a completely new checking account at a bank I had never used before. I didn't want it linked to my old profile. I didn't want any accidental overdraft protection transfers. I wanted a clean slate. Then I logged into my company's payroll portal. I deleted my existing direct deposit information. I entered the routing and account numbers for the new bank account. Effective date: immediate. My next paycheck would not go into the account they knew about. It would go into a vault they couldn't see. I sat back. That was step 1. Step 2 was the hard part. The Ross Family Support Fund was a joint account. I had signed the agreement. If I just stopped paying, they could technically claim I was in breach of our contract, as flimsy as it was. But I remembered the clause in the agreement. This agreement may be terminated by either party with 30 days written notice. I drafted the letter to Gwen and Martin Ross. Re-termination of voluntary support agreement. Effective 30 days from today. I will be ceasing all contributions to the Ross Family Support Fund. I didn't send it yet. I saved it as a PDF. I needed to time it right. I needed to make sure my assets were secured before I pulled the trigger. I went to my bedroom and packed a bag. I didn't know why. I just felt like I might need to leave quickly, or maybe I just wanted to feel prepared. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I looked at it. A text message from my mother. I felt a spike of adrenaline. Had they sensed it? Did they know I had changed my payroll? I picked up the phone. The message read, "He thinks she's close to cracking. Just keep it sweet. Remind her about the birthday dinner next week." I stared at the screen. The timestamp was 9:42 p.m. She had meant to send it to my father. They were in the same house, probably in different rooms, texting each other about how to handle me. Strategizing. He thinks she's close to cracking. They saw my questions not as intelligence, but as weakness. They thought I was breaking down under the pressure of my own guilt. They thought if they just kept it sweet, I would fold and send the check. Just keep it sweet. I read it twice, 3 times. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It wasn't a crime of passion. It was a cold, calculated campaign to manage me. I wasn't their daughter. I was an asset they were trying to retain. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot. I saved the image to the evidence folder on my phone. Then I moved it to the folder labeled Proof on my laptop. I looked at the text one last time before deleting the thread from my messages view, so I wouldn't have to see it every time I opened my phone. Just keep it sweet. I walked to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. My eyes were shadowed, but there was something else in my face that hadn't been there before. The daughter who needed their approval was gone. I wasn't going to crack. I went back to my laptop and opened the draft of the termination letter. I added a line at the bottom. "Please direct all future correspondence regarding this matter to my legal counsel." I didn't have legal counsel yet, but I would by tomorrow morning. I closed the laptop. The text message burned in my mind. A final, glowing ember of the bridge I was about to burn. They wanted sweet. I would give them silence, and it would cost them everything. Mara Klein's office was not in a glass tower downtown. It was in a converted brownstone on the north side of Chicago, a building with thick walls and narrow hallways that smelled of old paper and lemon polish. Mara herself was small, sharp-featured, and possessed a stillness that made me want to sit up straighter. She did not look like the lawyers on television who shouted and pounded tables. She looked like a surgeon who knew exactly where to cut to cause the most efficient death. I sat across from her, my hands folded in my lap to keep them from shaking. I had spent 20 minutes laying out the spreadsheet, the emails, the fake charity receipt, and the text message my mother had sent by mistake. Mara listened without interrupting. She took notes with a fountain pen, the scratch of the nib the only sound in the room. When I finished, she capped the pen and looked at me. "This is not a family dispute," she said. Her voice was cool, devoid of the pity I had come to expect from friends. "This is financial coercion masked as estate planning. They have created a corporate veil, the LLC, to legitimize the extraction of assets from you. It is clever, but it is also fraudulent." She tapped the printout of the Harbor Light invoice. "If they are soliciting funds as a charitable organization and using them for personal enrichment, that is fraud. If they are claiming tax-exempt status without the proper filings, that is tax fraud. And if they coerced you into signing a contract based on false representations of financial distress, that is civil fraud." I took a deep breath. "So, what do we do? Do I sue them?" "Not yet," Mara said. "Litigation is loud. We want to be quiet first. We want to gather so much paper that when we finally speak, they have no room to breathe." She slid a notepad toward me. "Rule number 1, she said, "you never speak to them about money on the phone again. If they call, you do not answer. You text back. Can't talk. Send an email. You need a paper trail for every single interaction. Rule number 2, she continued, "keep your voice steady. Do not get angry. Do not cry. You are not their daughter right now. You are a counterparty. Emotion is information, and you are going to stop giving them any." She instructed me to send a formal demand for an accounting ledger. Not a request, a demand. I sent the email from the parking lot of her office. "Dear Mom and Dad, in preparation for my own financial audit, I require a complete, itemized ledger of all funds distributed from the Ross Family Support Fund over the last 24 months. Please include vendor names, dates of service, and invoices matching the withdrawal amounts. I need this by Friday." I drove home, my heart rate steady for the first time in weeks. I had a general now. I wasn't fighting alone. The response came the next morning. It was not a ledger. It was a 3-page letter attached as a Word document. I opened it, bracing myself. "Bella, we sat down to read your email, and frankly, we wept. After 30 years of sacrificing our own dreams to ensure you had a future. To be treated like common thieves is a wound that will never heal. We gave up vacations to pay for your tuition. We drove cars into the ground so you could have piano lessons. And now, when we are in the twilight of our lives, asking for a small return on that investment, you demand an audit. There is no ledger. Bella, we do not keep receipts for survival. Do you ask for a receipt when you buy a drowning man a life jacket? We are disappointed, deeply, profoundly disappointed. We will pray that you find your way back to the values we raised you with." I read it twice. 3 years ago, this letter would have crushed me. I would have been on the phone within minutes, sobbing, apologizing, transferring $5,000 just to make the disappointed feeling go away. But today, I just saw the deflection. There is no ledger. That was the only sentence that mattered. They were admitting they had no records, or more likely, that the records were so damning they couldn't share them. I forwarded the letter to Mara. No ledger. I typed, "just guilt." Mara replied 4 minutes later. "Good. They just admitted in writing that they are commingling funds and failing to maintain corporate records. Save it." 2 days later, I had to go to Briar Glen. I didn't want to, but I had left a box of winter clothes in their attic, and I refused to buy new ones when I had perfectly good wool coats sitting in a house I was paying for. I didn't tell them I was coming. I just drove. When I turned onto their street, the first thing I noticed was the light. The afternoon sun was hitting the front of the house, and it was gleaming. I slowed the car. The old, peeling wood siding that my father had complained about for years was gone. In its place was fresh, intricate stonework. gray slate stacked in an elegant, modern pattern that wrapped around the entire first floor. And the windows. My mother had sworn the windows were drafty. She had said the heating bills were astronomical because the seals were broken. The windows facing the street were brand new. Floor-to-ceiling casements with black frames. The kind of windows you saw in architectural magazines. I pulled into the driveway, staring. This was easily a $40,000 renovation, maybe 50. I got out of the car. My stomach twisted. They had told me last month that they were eating rice and beans to save money. They had told me they were barely making it. I walked to the front door. Before I could ring the bell, a voice called out from the sidewalk. "Bella." "Is that you?" I turned. It was Cynthia Vale, a neighbor who had lived 3 doors down since I was a child. She was walking a golden retriever, wearing a tennis skirt and a visor. "Cynthia." "Hi," I said, forcing a smile. "Oh my gosh. Look at you," Cynthia said, beaming. "We haven't seen you in ages. Gwen said you have been working practically 24 hours a day. Work is busy." I said, "Well, it is clearly paying off." Cynthia gestured to the house. "The stonework is just gorgeous." "Bella, truly. Your mother told us how you insisted on the upgrade." I froze. "I insisted. She said you just couldn't stand the idea of them living in a drafty house." Cynthia continued, leaning in conspiratorially. "It is so sweet. Most kids your age are still asking for handouts. And here you are, basically rebuilding the family estate." She lowered her voice. "And the donor dinner last week, Gwen showed me the photos. The centerpieces were stunning. I had no idea you were backing their foundation so heavily. Harbor Light, right? It is amazing what they are doing for. What is the cause again? Unwed mothers." I stood there, my keys digging into my palm. They weren't just stealing my money, they were laundering it into social status. They were telling the neighbors that I was the wealthy, benevolent daughter who showered them with renovations. It explained everything. It explained why they posted those grateful messages on Facebook. It wasn't about love, it was about explaining the money. If they showed up with a new SUV or new windows, people would ask questions. But if they said, "Bella insisted," then they weren't grifters. They were just parents of a successful, generous child. It was brilliant, and it was sick. I didn't know about a donor dinner. I said, my voice flat, "Oh, you probably just paid for it and let them handle the glory." Cynthia laughed. "That is very classy of you. Anyway, tell Gwen I said hello." She tugged on the dog's leash and walked away. I didn't go inside. I couldn't. I looked at the new windows one last time. I could see the reflection of my car in the glass. The car I drove with 100,000 miles on it. I got back in the driver's seat and reversed out of the driveway. I didn't get my winter clothes. I would freeze before I stepped foot in that house today. I called Mara from the highway. "They are holding donor dinners." I said, "And they renovated the exterior. Stonework. New windows." Mara didn't gasp. She didn't sigh. "Photographs?" she asked. I didn't take any. I was too shocked. "Go back to Google Street View later," she said. "See if the satellite image has updated. If not, we hire a private investigator to drive by and take photos. We need proof of assets. If they are pleading poverty while installing slate facades, that is material evidence of misrepresentation." She paused. "I am filing the complaint with the State Charity Oversight Division tomorrow," she said. "We are going to flag Harbor Light Community Solutions, LLC, for solicitation fraud. We are going to ask the state to look into where the donations are going." "Do it," I said. The next week was a blur of paperwork. Dylan came over on Tuesday night. He had a stack of printouts. I traced the transfers. He said, laying the papers on my kitchen island. He pointed to a flowchart he had drawn. "Here is your money entering the Ross Family Support Fund. Here it moves to the Harbor Light LLC account." He tapped a line on exiting the LLC account. "And here it leaves." They labeled these outflows as program consulting and field equipment. He looked at me. "The program consulting payments go to a Chase Sapphire card registered to Martin Ross. The field equipment payments go to BMW Financial Services." He flipped a page. "And here's the kicker. They paid a catering company $4,000 last week. Elite events. That must be the dinner your neighbor talked about. They used your money to throw a party to celebrate how much money you give them. I looked at the numbers. It was so clean, so transactional. So they are paying themselves to be consultants for a charity that does nothing but pay their bills. I said, "Exactly," Dylan said. "And because they are calling it a business expense, they are probably writing it off. They are stealing from you and cheating the IRS at the same time." I felt a cold resolve harden in my stomach. "I want them to know," I said. "I want them to know I know." "Not yet," Dylan said. "Mara says wait. Let the state send the letter. Let them panic first." But my parents sensed the shift. The silence from my end was too loud. 2 days after I spoke to Dylan, the tone of their texts changed. The guilt trips stopped. The demands for money stopped. Suddenly, they were nostalgic. My mother sent me a photo of me as a toddler, sitting in a plastic pool in the backyard, laughing. "Found this today," she wrote. "I miss that laugh. We were so happy then. Love you. Bean. Bean." Her childhood nickname for me. Then a voice note from my father. "Hey Bella. Just driving past the old ice cream shop we used to go to. Thinking of you. Remember the mint chocolate chip good times? Hope you are working hard, but not too hard. Proud of you. It was the love bombing phase. I had read about it, when a manipulator feels their target pulling away. They flood them with affection to reel them back in. They remind you of the good times so you forget the bad times." I didn't reply. Then came the invitation. "Bella, we need to have a family meeting." My mother texted, "No money talk. We promise. We just want to see you. We want to reset. Please come for coffee on Sunday. Just us." I forwarded the text to Mara. "Should I go?" "Yes." Mara replied, "But you are not going to reset. You are going to listen. Wear a recorder. If they make any admissions, we want them on tape. Indiana is a one-party consent state. You do not need to tell them you are recording. I bought a small digital recorder online. It looked like a USB drive. I slipped it into the pocket of my blazer. I arrived at the house on Sunday at 2:00 p.m. The new stonework looked even more imposing up close. I walked up the path, took a deep breath, and turned the recorder on in my pocket. My mother opened the door. She hugged me tight, smelling of expensive perfume. "I missed you," she whispered. I stood stiffly in her arms. "I missed you too." I said, the lie tasting like copper. Come in," she said, ushering me into the living room. My father was there, sitting in his armchair, but there was someone else. A man I didn't know was sitting on the sofa. He was in his 50s, wearing a suit that was slightly too shiny and a tie that was slightly too wide. "Bella," my father said, standing up. "This is Elliot Rains. He is a financial advisor, a friend of a friend." I stopped. "You said it was just us." We know, my mother said, soothingly, "but Elliot had some great ideas about how to help you. We thought it would be good for you to hear him out, since you are so worried about the long term." Elliot stood up and extended a hand. His grip was damp. "Pleasure to meet you, Bella," he said. "Your parents speak the world of you, truly, the rock of the family." I sat down on the edge of the ottoman. I didn't take my coat off. "What is this?" I asked. "We want to formalize things," Martin said. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "We know the last few months have been rocky. We know you feel like things are unstructured." So Elliot drew up a plan. Elliot reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick document. "It is a family trust commitment," Elliot said, sliding it across the coffee table. "Basically, it locks in your contribution rate for the next 3 years, but it gives you some tax advantages. We structure it as a gift annuity. It guarantees your parents' security, and it gets you a deduction. Win-win." I looked at the document. Irrevocable trust. The word irrevocable jumped out at me. If I signed this, I wasn't just giving them money. I was legally binding myself to give them money. I wouldn't be able to stop. And the rate, I glanced at the summary page, $5,000 per month. They were trying to give themselves a raise. I looked up at Elliot. Who do you work for? Elliot. I am an independent consultant, he said, smiling. I specialize in intergenerational wealth preservation. You mean you specialize in securing income for parents from their children? I said. Martin's face tightened. Bella, be polite. I am being polite. I said. I'm just reading the document. I stood up. I'm not signing this. Bella, please, Gwen said, her voice rising in pitch. Just read it. It protects everyone. It means we don't have to ask you every month. It stops the fighting. Don't you want to stop the fighting? I do, I said. But I am not signing a contract to pay you $60,000 a year. I need to buy my own house. I need to live my life. Martin looked at Elliot. Then he looked at me. He smirked. It was a tiny, fleeting expression. The corner of his mouth twitched up. It wasn't a smile of affection. It was a smile of ownership. Don't worry, Elliot, Martin said, leaning back in his chair. She just needs time. She is cautious. She gets that from me. He looked me in the eye. She will do the right thing, he said. She always does. The air in the room felt suffocating. They weren't asking me. They were telling me. They believed, down to their marrow, that I was incapable of saying no. They believed they had trained me too well. I am taking this with me, I said, picking up the document. I will have my lawyer review it. My father's smirk faltered. Your lawyer? I have a lawyer for my house closing. I lied smoothly. I run everything by her. Take it, Martin said, waving his hand. Show it to whoever you want. It is standard stuff. I walked to the door. My mother tried to hug me again, but I stepped back. I will let you know, I said. I walked out to my car. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely get the key in the ignition. I drove to a park 3 miles away. I pulled into a parking spot facing the trees. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the recorder. I needed to hear it. I needed to know what happened after the door closed. I plugged headphones into the device and hit rewind. I heard the sound of my own footsteps walking away, the sound of the front door closing. Then, silence. Then, Martin's voice. Lawyer. That is a bluff. She doesn't have a lawyer. Elliot's voice. If she shows that to a real attorney, you guys are cooked. That contract is barely legal. It is predatory. Gwen's voice. She won't. She is scared. Did you see her face? She is terrified of disappointing us. I sat in the driver's seat, staring at the trees. Then, my mother spoke again. Her voice was lower, closer to wherever the recorder had been before I walked out. Or maybe she was just whispering in the kitchen while the men talked. Just keep pressing, Martin, she whispered. Once she signs, we are safe. The house is paid for. The debts are cleared. We just need her signature and we are free. Once she signs, we are safe. Safe from what? Safe from the consequences of their own spending, safe from having to work, safe from me. They viewed me as a danger. My independence was a threat to their survival. I took the headphones off. I didn't cry. The grief I had felt last week was gone. It had evaporated, leaving something hard and cold in its place. I wasn't a daughter. I was a resource. I was a vein of gold they were mining. And they were worried the mine was about to collapse. I put the car in gear. I drove straight to Mara's office. It was Sunday, but I knew she checked her Dropbox. I put the recording and the trust commitment in an envelope. I wrote a note on the front. File the complaint. Freeze everything. I was done doing the right thing. It was time to do the necessary thing. The first of the month fell on a Tuesday. For 3 years, the first of the month had been a ritual of anxiety and obedience. I would log into my bank account, type in the routing number for the Ross Family Support Fund, and transfer $4,000. It was a muscle memory, a twitch in my fingers that happened before my brain could even protest. This Tuesday, I sat at my desk at work. I logged into my bank account. I looked at the balance, and I did nothing. I closed the tab. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. By 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. Did you forget? It is the first. I archived the message without replying. By 11 o'clock, The phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. By noon, the texts had shifted tone. Bella, we are at the pharmacy. We need to pick up the prescription. The card was declined. Please handle this immediately. There was no prescription. I knew that now. The pharmacy was likely a lunch bill or a gas station fill-up for the SUV I was paying for. I sat in a budget meeting, listening to the drone of the projector, while my phone vibrated incessantly against the table. It was like a bomb counting down in my pocket. At 2:00, my father called. Then he called again. Then a text. Are you trying to hurt us? Is this a game to you? Pick up the phone. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. My heart was racing, a frantic rabbit kicking against my ribs. The conditioning was deep. Every vibration of the phone triggered a wave of nausea and a voice in my head screaming, "Fix it, fix it, fix it." But I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked at the dark circles under my eyes. No. I whispered to the reflection. Not today. By 5:00, the panic on their end had curdled into rage. You are abandoning your family, my mother wrote. After everything we did for you, you are leaving us to die out here. Do you have any idea how selfish you are being? And then, the threat, if you do not transfer the funds by tonight, we are going to tell everyone what you did. We will tell them how you cut us off, how you left us with nothing. People will know who you really are. I stared at the message. Tell everyone what you did. They were threatening to destroy my reputation because I refused to be robbed. I took a screenshot. I forwarded it to Mara. They are threatening me. I typed. Mara's reply was instant. Do not respond. I am sending the letter now. That evening. The silence from my end was deafening. I sat in my apartment, the lights off, watching the city below. I imagined the scene in Briar Glen, the confusion, the anger, the realization that the ATM had not just run out of cash, but had been unplugged from the wall. The next morning, Mara fired the first shot. It wasn't a lawsuit yet. It was a preservation letter, a formal legal notice sent via courier to their doorstep, demanding that they preserve all financial records, bank statements, and communications regarding the Ross Family Support Fund and Harbor Light Community Solutions, LLC. It also contained a paragraph regarding harassment. Any further communication with my client regarding financial matters will be considered harassment and may be used as grounds for a restraining order. Direct all future correspondence to this office. The reaction was immediate, but not direct. They didn't call me. They went to Facebook. I was at work when Sabrina texted me. Don't look at Facebook, but also, look at Facebook. I opened the app. My mother had posted a long, rambling status update. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. It is a tragedy when you pour your life into a child, giving them every ounce of your soul, only to have them turn their back on you when they find success. Sharp is the tooth of the ungrateful child. We are heartbroken to be abandoned in our time of need by those we trusted most. Prayers appreciated as we navigate this betrayal. It had 60 likes. The comments were a chorus of sympathy. So sorry. Gwen kids these days have no loyalty. Stay strong. You two are saints. I read the comments, feeling a hot flush of shame creep up my neck. They were winning the narrative to the world. I was the cold, successful corporate daughter who had forgotten where she came from. To the world. They were the martyrs. I wanted to reply. I wanted to post the screenshots of the blackmail texts. I wanted to post the PDF of the fake charity receipt. But Mara's voice was in my head. Emotion is information. Stop giving them any. I closed the app. Let them have the likes. I was coming for the ledger. But the war didn't stay on social media. It followed me to the office. 3 days after I stopped the payments, I was called into the HR director's office. This was not normal. I was a model employee. I hit my KPIs. I was invisible in the best way. The HR director, a woman named Karen who usually smiled at me in the break room, looked grave. She had a printed email on her desk. "Bella, please sit down," she said. I sat, my hands folding automatically in my lap. We received an anonymous tip this morning via our ethics hotline email. Karen said. She slid the paper across the desk. I looked at it. The email address was a generic Gmail account, concernedcitizen554gmail.com. To whom it may concern. I believe it is my duty to inform you that one of your senior analysts, Bella Ross, is currently under investigation for financial impropriety regarding the mismanagement of funds for a nonprofit organization. While this is a personal matter, I thought you should know that she may be leveraging her position at your firm to mask these activities. Integrity matters. I felt the blood drain from my face. It wasn't true. I wasn't under investigation. They were under investigation. But the language. Integrity matters. That was my father's favorite phrase. He used it whenever he was lecturing me about why I had to pay for something. They were trying to get me fired. They knew that without my job, I had no power. If they cut off my income, I couldn't hire lawyers. I couldn't fight them. Bella Karen asked, "Is there anything you want to tell us?" I looked up at her. I could have cried. I could have panicked. The old Bella would have stammered and apologized for the drama, but the old Bella was dead. "This is retaliation," I said. My voice was steady, calm, almost bored. "Retaliation?" Karen asked. "I am currently in the process of a civil legal dispute with a family member regarding financial fraud committed against me," I said. "My attorney, Mara Klein, sent a cease and desist letter to them 3 days ago. This email is a direct response to that. It is an attempt to harass me and jeopardize my employment." I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder I now carried everywhere. I produced the preservation letter Mara had sent. "Here is the legal notice," I said, "and if you check the IP address of that email, I guarantee it will trace back to a residential address in Briar Glen, Indiana." Karen looked at the letter. She looked at me. She saw the steel in my spine. "I see," she said. She slid the email back into a file. "Thank you for the context. Bella, we take these things seriously, but we also recognize malicious intent when we see it. I will make a note in your file that this is a personal legal matter." I stood up. "Thank you. Karen, I apologize that this spilled over into the workplace. It won't happen again." I walked back to my desk. My hands were trembling, but only slightly. They had tried to kill me professionally. They had tried to take the food out of my mouth. It wasn't just greed anymore. It was war. That night, I went to Sabrina's apartment. I lay on her couch, staring at the ceiling, while she poured wine. "They hate me," I said quietly. "They actually hate me." "They don't hate you," Sabrina said, handing me a glass. "They are losing control of you. For narcissists, that feels the same as hate." I watched the wine swirl in the glass. "I just want them to stop. I want them to admit it. They won't," Sabrina said. "Bella, you have to prepare yourself for the fact that you might never get the apology. You might never get the, 'I'm sorry.' You are going to have to tolerate being misunderstood." "What does that mean?" "It means they are going to tell lies about you," Sabrina said. "They are going to tell Aunt Susan and Cousin Mike and the lady at the bakery that you are a monster, and you are going to have to live with that. You are going to have to be okay with being the villain in their story, so you can be the hero in yours." I thought about the Facebook post, "The ungrateful child." It hurts. I said, "I know." She said, "But it costs $0 to be the villain. It cost you $384,000 to be the hero." "Which one can you afford?" I laughed. It was a dry, ragged sound. "I can't afford the hero anymore." I said, "The next day, Dylan called me. 'I have something,' he said, 'and you are going to want to sit down.' I am sitting." I said, "I was at my kitchen table, the command center of my new life. I kept digging into the LLC." Dylan said, "Harbor Light Community Solutions. I was trying to find where the money went after it hit their accounts. We knew about the cars and the renovations. But there was a chunk of money, about $60,000, that went to a separate entity." "What entity?" "Briar Glen Holdings," Dylan said. I frowned. "I have never heard of it." "Neither had I." Dylan said, "So I pulled the property records. Briar Glen Holdings purchased a small commercial building in downtown Briar Glen 6 months ago. It is a storefront, currently leased to a boutique. They bought a building," I asked. "With my money?" Dylan hesitated. It is worse than that. Bella, they didn't just use your cash for the down payment. I found the loan application documents. They are public record because there was a lien filing, and they listed the Ross Family Support Fund as a guaranteed revenue stream. They used your monthly transfers to prove cash flow to get the mortgage. They leveraged you. You are the collateral. I felt the room spin. They didn't just spend the money, they invested it. They used me to build an asset that they own. And let me guess, I said, my voice shaking. My name isn't on the deed. No, Dylan said. The deed is in the name of Briar Glen Holdings. Managing partners, Martin and Gwen Ross. I hung up the phone. I sat there, processing the scale of the betrayal. I had been eating ramen noodles. I had been skipping doctor appointments. I had been denying myself the most basic comforts because I thought they were starving. And meanwhile, they were building a real estate portfolio. They weren't bad with money. They were excellent with my money. I called Mara. File the complaint. I said, "We are ready," she asked. "We are ready," I said, "and add account for unjust enrichment, and fraud in the inducement, and whatever else you have. I want everything back. I want the house. I want the commercial building. I want the car. I am drafting it now." Mara said, "The complaint was filed on a Friday. Bella Ross versus Martin Ross, Gwen Ross, and Harbor Light Community Solutions, LLC. It was a civil suit alleging fraud, conversion, breach of contract, and unjust enrichment. It laid out the scheme in brutal, black-and-white detail. The fake charity, the doctored invoices, the coercion. We demanded repayment of $384,000, plus punitive damages and legal fees. The reaction was silence for 3 days. Then, the settlement offer arrived. It didn't come from a lawyer. It came from Elliot Rains, the financial advisor. He emailed Mara, copying me. Subject proposal for family reconciliation. I opened the attachment. It was a document titled Family Loan Note and Non-Disclosure Agreement. The audacity of the terms made me gasp. 1. The defendants, Martin and Gwen Ross, agree to acknowledge the past support as a family loan. 2. The loan will be repaid over a period of 40 years at 0% interest, contingent on the financial stability of the defendants. San. The plaintiff. Bella Ross agrees to immediately resume monthly support payments of $2,000 to ensure said stability. 4. The plaintiff agrees to a strict confidentiality clause regarding all family financial matters. Any breach of this confidentiality results in the forfeiture of the loan repayment. 5. The plaintiff will issue a public statement apologizing for the misunderstanding regarding the charitable status of Harbor Light. My eyes stayed on the screen. They wanted me to pay them $2,000 a month so they could slowly pay me back the money they stole, over 40 years. While I apologized to the world for catching them, it wasn't a settlement. It was a pair of handcuffs. I called Mara. "Tell them no." I said, "I am already typing the rejection." Mara said. Her voice was sharp. "This is insulting. It is not even a legal offer. It is a joke. I don't just want to reject it." I said, "I want to depose them. I want to sit across a table from them, under oath, and ask them about the font changes on the invoices. I want to ask them about the donor dinner. I want to ask them about Briar Glen Holdings. Set the deposition date." Mara. I said, "Consider it done," she said. I sent one final text to my parents. I didn't want to, but I needed to close the door they kept trying to pry open with their guilt trips. "I received your proposal. It is rejected. All future communication goes through counsel. See you in discovery." I blocked their numbers. 2 weeks passed. The deposition was scheduled for the following month. The silence was heavy, but it was peaceful. I started sleeping through the night. I started looking at real estate listings again. Not because I could afford anything yet, but because I allowed myself to dream. Then, I saw the flyer. I was at a coffee shop in the city, waiting for Sabrina. There was a community board near the entrance. A flyer was pinned to the cork. Harbor Light Outreach, Annual Gala, Celebrating Community Heroes, Keynote Speakers, Martin and Gwen Ross. Location, the Drake Hotel. Chicago. I stared at the date. It was tonight. They were in my city. They were hosting a gala for their fake charity in a hotel ballroom 5 miles from my apartment. I shouldn't go. Mara would tell me not to go. Sabrina would tell me not to go. But I had to see it. I had to see the lie in its final form. I went home and changed. I put on a black dress. Simple and severe. I pulled my hair back. I put on the coat I had bought at the thrift store years ago. I took a cab to the Drake. The ballroom was on the 2nd floor. I walked past the registration table, keeping my head down. The event was crowded. People in tuxedos and gowns were milling about, holding champagne flutes. I slipped into the back of the room, standing in the shadows near the service entrance. The room was beautiful. There were centerpieces of white lilies. There was a jazz band playing softly, and there, at the front of the room, were my parents. They looked magnificent. My father was in a tuxedo that fit him perfectly. My mother was wearing a navy sequined gown that shimmered under the lights. She looked 10 years younger. They were holding court. A circle of people surrounded them, donors. Presumably, people who had written checks to Harbor Light, thinking they were saving the world, when they were really just paying for my mother's sequins. I watched them laugh. It was a free, easy sound, the sound of people who had no conscience to weigh them down. A woman in the circle raised her glass. To the Rosses, she said, her voice carrying over the music, "You two are an inspiration. How you managed to do so much with so little. It is a miracle." My mother lowered her head modestly. "Oh, stop," she said. "We are just the vessel. We just do what needs to be done." "And your daughter?" the woman asked. "Is she here? I heard she was the one who really pushed for the expansion." My father put his arm around my mother's waist. He smiled. A sad, bauble smile. "Bella wanted to be here," he said. He sighed. "But she is shy. She prefers to stay in the background. She insisted on funding the new initiative, but she hates the spotlight. She just adores giving back. It is her heart. We are so proud of her." The group murmured their approval. So humble, so sweet. I stood in the shadows, my hands clenched at my sides. She insisted. She adores giving back. They were using my absence just as effectively as they had used my presence. They had turned my silence into a virtue they could sell. They had erased my pain and replaced it with a story that made them look like successful parents of a saint. I felt something snap inside me. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the sound of a tether breaking, the last thread that connected me to the hope that they might actually love me. They didn't love me. They didn't even know me. They only knew the character they had created to explain their bank account. I looked at them one last time. I memorized the way the light hit my mother's earrings. I memorized the confident tilt of my father's chin. I turned around and walked out. I stepped out of the hotel into the cold Chicago night. The wind whipped off the lake, sharp and biting. I took a deep breath. The air tasted clean. I didn't feel hatred. Hatred was hot. Hatred was messy. I felt clarity, cold, crystalline clarity. They thought they had won because they controlled the room. They thought they were safe because I was shy and stayed in the background. They had no idea. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I opened my email. I found the thread with Mara. Subject deposition strategy. I typed a reply. "Don't settle. I want them on the stand. I want every single receipt entered into the public record. I want the world to know exactly what kind of heroes they are." I hit send. I hailed a cab. Where to the driver asked. "Home," I said. And for the first time in 3 years, I knew exactly where that was. It wasn't in Briar Glen. It wasn't in a house paid for with guilt. It was in the truth, and I was about to bring the truth to court. The subpoenas went out on a Tuesday morning in late February. They were not dramatic. They were simply heavy. My attorney, Mara Klein, explained that truth in the legal system does not move like a lightning bolt. It moves like a glacier. It is slow, grinding, and it crushes everything in its path. But you have to wait for it. We subpoenaed everything. We asked for the bank records of the Ross Family Support Fund. We asked for the credit card statements of Martin and Gwen Ross. We asked for the vendor invoices of Harbor Light Community Solutions, LLC. We even subpoenaed the text message history between my parents and Elliot Rains, the so-called financial advisor who had tried to lock me into a lifetime of servitude. For 3 weeks, my apartment became a war room of cardboard boxes and PDF printouts. I stopped going to happy hours. I stopped dating. I lived in the data. The process of discovery is intrusive. It strips away the privacy of a life and lays it out on a conference table. And as the documents started trickling in, I began to see the anatomy of the lie. It was not just money, it was the disdain. I found an email chain between my father and a contractor regarding the new stonework on the house. Client Martin Ross. Date August 12th. Please expedite the slate installation. Funding is secured. My daughter is good for the overage. Just bill it as structural repair on the invoice. Structural repair. I looked at the date. August 12th. That was the week I had canceled my dental appointment because I couldn't afford the copay. I was walking around with a toothache while my father was ordering premium slate and telling the contractor to lie about it. I sat in Mara's office for deposition preparation. Staring at that email, they didn't just steal from me. I said, my voice quiet. They laughed at me. Mara sat across from me. Her hands folded over a yellow legal pad. They viewed you as a resource, Bella. She said, a resource does not have feelings. A resource has a yield. You provided a high yield. But why did I let them? I asked. The question had been haunting me. I am a smart woman. I analyze risk for a living. How did I let them drain $384,000 from me without seeing it? Mara looked at me. Her eyes sharp but not unkind. Because they trained you, she said. They didn't steal the money in the middle of the night. They groomed you to hand it over. They taught you from the time you were a child that love is transactional. They taught you that your value in the family is directly tied to your utility. If you pay, you are good. If you say no, you are bad. You didn't confuse love with compliance, Bella. They trained you to believe they were the same thing. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I wiped it away quickly. Compliance is not love, I whispered. No, Mara said. It is control. And breaking that control is much harder than recovering the money. The opposition was not idle. My parents had hired a lawyer, a man named Sterling Vance who specialized in family reputation management. Sterling Vance did not care about the invoices. He cared about the narrative. He filed a response to our complaint that painted a picture of a tragic, unstable daughter in his filings. He described me as emotionally volatile and prone to rewriting history. He claimed that the payments were voluntary gifts offered by a successful daughter to her aging parents, and that this lawsuit was a vindictive tantrum brought on by a personal mental health crisis. He even referenced the time I had asked for receipts as paranoia induced by workplace stress. Reading the filing was like being gaslit by a professional. He is trying to bait you. Mara warned me. He wants you to explode. He wants you to scream in the deposition so he can say, "See, she is unstable." I won't scream. I said, "Good," Mara said, "because we have something better than screaming. We have Dylan." Dylan Mercer had been working quietly in the background, treating my family's finances like a crime scene. 2 days before the hearing, he called me to his office. He laid a single sheet of paper on the desk. It was a reconciliation spreadsheet. On the left side was a list of every transfer I had made to the Ross Family Support Fund over 3 years. The total at the bottom was bolded $384,150. On the right side was a list of purchases made by my parents and their LLC. Briar Glen Holdings Commercial Property, down payment, $60,000. Land Rover, lease payments, 36 months, $42,000. Harbor Light, gala donor events, $28,000. Home renovations, windows/stonework, $55,000. Personal credit card payoffs, travel/dining, $120,000. Cash withdrawals, $79,000. The total on the right side, $384,000. It matched, almost to the dollar. They didn't spend their own money, Dylan said, tapping the paper. They lived entirely on yours. Every luxury, every investment, every dinner out. They used their own income, whatever small amount they actually have, to hoard cash in offshore accounts or hidden trusts, while they burned through yours. He pointed to the commercial property line. This is the smoking gun. Bella, they took your charitable donation and used it to buy a building they own. That is not just unethical. That is conversion. That is theft. I looked at the numbers. It was a map of my own exploitation. They bought a building. I said, and a car. Dylan said, and a reputation. I took the paper. I folded it carefully and put it in my bag. I am ready, I said. But the night before the hearing, the ground shifted. I was packing my bag for court when Mara called me. It was 9 o'clock at night. Her voice was urgent. We have a problem, she said. What happened? I just got a notification from the state filing system. She said, Harbor Light Community Solutions, LLC, filed for dissolution at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Dissolution, I asked. What does that mean? It means they are killing the company, Mara said. They are trying to wipe it off the map before the judge can look at it. And that is not the worst part. I gripped the phone. I have a contact at the bank. Mara said, they can't give me details, but they flagged a massive wire transfer request initiated an hour ago. They are trying to empty the accounts. Bella, they are trying to move the remaining cash, your cash, out of jurisdiction. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. If they moved the money, I would win the lawsuit but get nothing. I would be chasing a ghost. Stop them, I said. I am trying. Mara said, I am filing an emergency ex parte motion right now to freeze all assets. I am waking up a judge, but it is a race. If the wire clears before the order lands, the money is gone. I paced my apartment for hours. I felt helpless. This was the game they played. They knew the system better than I did. They knew how to hide. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the sun come up over Chicago, wondering if I had just lost everything. At 6 o'clock in the morning, my phone buzzed. It was Mara. The judge signed the order. The accounts are frozen. We caught it by minutes. I exhaled, a sound that was half sob, half laugh. See you at the courthouse, she texted. The Westbridge County Courthouse was a fortress of limestone and glass, designed to make you feel small. I arrived at 8:30 in the morning. The sky was gray, threatening snow. I wore my best suit, navy blue, sharp, armor. Mara met me at the security checkpoint. She looked calm, but her eyes were tired. They are already here, she said. They are upstairs outside the courtroom. How do they look? I asked. Mara hesitated. They look comfortable. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallway was lined with wooden benches. The air smelled of floor wax and nervous sweat. I saw them immediately. My parents were standing near the window, talking to Sterling Vance. They did not look like defendants in a fraud case. They looked like they were attending a garden party. My father was laughing at something the lawyer said, his head thrown back. My mother was adjusting her scarf, smiling that serene, beatific smile she used when she was accepting compliments about her charity work. They looked relaxed. They looked like they were about to win a family argument, not face the consequences of grand larceny. My stomach twisted. Did they know something I didn't? Or were they just so delusional, so convinced of their own righteousness, that they couldn't imagine a world where they lost? They saw me. My mother's face lit up, not with fear, but with a performance of pity. Bella, she called out. She started to walk toward me, her arms open. Sterling Vance put a hand on her arm to stop her, but she shook him off. She walked right up to me. I stood my ground. I didn't step back. I didn't flinch. You look tired, sweetie, she said. Her voice was low, intimate. This whole thing is taking such a toll on you. Look at your skin. I stared at her. She was commenting on my complexion while her lawyer was filing motions calling me insane. I am fine, Mom, I said. She stepped closer. She invaded my personal space, bringing with her the scent of vanilla and expensive dishonesty. She leaned in, close enough that her breath tickled my ear. "You really should have taken the deal," she whispered. Her voice dropped the sweetness. It became hard, like jagged glass. "You are going to embarrass yourself in there. You will regret doing this to us." I pulled back and looked at her. There it was, the threat, the belief that regret was my default setting. She thought I was still the girl who would apologize for breathing too loud. She thought that if she pressed the guilt button, I would fold. She smiled at me a tight, warning smile and turned back to her lawyer. I watched her walk away, and for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely nothing for her. No love, no hate, no fear. I just felt done. The bailiff opened the heavy oak doors. "All rise," he bellowed. We filed into the courtroom. It was quiet, the air thick with the seriousness of the law. The Honorable Judge Holloway sat on the bench, a woman with gray hair and glasses that sat low on her nose. My parents sat at the defense table. I sat with Mara at the plaintiff's table. The hearing was procedural, a status conference to address the asset freeze and set the timeline for the trial. But in the legal world, these moments were where the tone was set. Sterling Vance stood up first. "Your Honor," he began, his voice smooth and oily, "we are here today because of a tragic misunderstanding within a family. My clients, Martin and Gwen Ross, are upstanding members of the community. They are philanthropists. The allegations brought by their daughter are baseless, stemming from a personal dispute, not a legal one. The freezing of their assets is an extreme measure that is causing them undue hardship. We ask that the order be lifted immediately." Judge Holloway looked over her glasses at him. "Undue hardship," she asked. "The court has reviewed the preliminary evidence regarding the dissolution of the LLC yesterday afternoon. Can you explain why your clients attempted to liquidate the accounts of Harbor Light Community Solutions hours before this hearing?" Sterling Vance cleared his throat. "Routine business operations, Your Honor. Reallocating funds for upcoming projects." "Routine?" the judge asked. "Dissolving a corporate entity is routine." She turned her gaze to our table. "Ms. Klein, does the plaintiff have a response?" Mara stood up. "Your Honor, the plaintiff asserts that the attempted transfer was a direct effort to hide assets derived from fraud. We have forensic accounting records showing that $384,000 of the plaintiff's money was funneled through these accounts and used for personal enrichment, including the purchase of real estate and vehicles. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a scheme." My parents were shaking their heads vigorously. My father leaned over and whispered something angry to his lawyer. My mother looked at the judge with wide, wounded eyes, dabbing at a tear that wasn't there. The judge looked at the papers in front of her. She looked at the motion to freeze assets. She looked at the dissolution filing. She took off her glasses. "This court takes allegations of fraud very seriously," she said, "especially when they involve the exploitation of family members and the misuse of charitable structures." She looked directly at me. "Ms. Ross," she said. I stood up. My legs felt solid. My hands were steady. "Yes, Your Honor, you are the plaintiff," the judge said. "You are alleging that your parents manipulated you into funding their lifestyle under false pretenses. That is a heavy accusation. Before we proceed into the discovery phase, which will be invasive and public, is there anything you wish to add? Is there any possibility of mediation?" The room went silent. I could feel my parents' eyes on me. I could feel the weight of their expectation. They expected me to crumble. They expected me to stammer, to say that I loved them, to say that maybe we could work it out privately. They expected the daughter they had trained, but that daughter was gone. I looked at the judge. Then, I turned my head and looked directly at my parents. I looked at Martin, with his expensive suit and his arrogant smirk. I looked at Gwen, with her sequined lies and her whisper of, "You'll regret this." I saw them for what they were, not giants, not gods, just two small, greedy people who had sold their own child for a luxury SUV and a stone facade. I looked back at the judge. "No, Your Honor," I said. My voice was clear. It carried to the back of the room. There is no possibility of mediation. I paused. The silence stretched, tight as a wire. I turned to my parents one last time. I looked my mother in the eye. I am done paying for your lies. I said. My tone was flat, calm, and irreversible. See you in discovery. My mother gasped. My father's face went red. The judge nodded. A small, grim motion. Very well, she said. The asset freeze remains in effect. Discovery is open. We will reconvene in 30 days. She banged the gavel. The sound was sharp and final, like a door slamming shut. I turned around and walked out of the courtroom. I didn't look back. I didn't need to see their faces. I knew what they looked like. They looked like people who had just realized that the bank was closed. The account was empty, and the bill had finally come due. I walked down the hallway, past the wooden benches, past the security checkpoint, and out into the cold, gray morning. I took a deep breath. It was freezing. It was bleak, but it was mine. Every dollar in my pocket was mine. Every decision I made from this moment on was mine. I hailed a cab. Where to? The driver asked. The bank. I said, I have a down payment to make. As the cab pulled away, I watched the courthouse recede in the rearview mirror. The legal battle would be long. It would be ugly, but I wasn't afraid. I had the receipts. I had the truth. And for the first time in 33 years, I had myself. Thank you so much for listening to the complete story of Bella Ross and her journey from silence to strength. It has been a privilege to share this revenge story with you. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please leave a comment below and tell me which country you call home. If you enjoyed Bella's battle for justice, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories so you never miss an episode. And finally, I want to hear from you. What would you have done in Bella's shoes? Share your thoughts in English in the comments section. Until next time.